Dog Pokemon are the best category of Pokemon. This is provable. There is a lot of evidence. Nobody's denying that, but the real question on the minds of all gamers worldwide is which dog Pokemon are the best in a numerical rank? Good thing you have me. Finally, answer this question once and for all. Every dog has its day, and that day is today. I am going to rank every single dog-themed Pokemon in the series, from worst to best in competitive singles, and we're going to do it right now. If you want some dog-themed clothing in honor of this dog-themed video, check out jimothycool.com, where the best dog clothing you've ever seen is available for sale. Check it out right now. Thank you. At the very bottom of the list, the worst dog in the Pokemon series, it would have to be Mightyena. Now, a lot of people dispute the fact that this is even a dog in the first place. It's clearly hyena adjacent, but I would put forth the idea that this is some sort of hyena X dog combination, because the baby form of this Pokemon is called Poochyena, which, you know, pooch is a word to refer to dogs, and then there's hyena at the end of it. It's some sort of a dog-hyena hybrid, folks, and it has a very dog-like appearance. So I would push back against the anti-dog sentiment that people are recently pushing towards Mightyena. Now that we've got that out of the way, I mean, this Pokemon debuted in Gen 3 where it was instantly terrible, and that is saying something, because Gen 3 is a very low power level environment, and this guy doesn't look that bad. He looks like he should be okay. If I saw this in real life, I'd be a little frightened, but the sad reality is that this Pokemon doesn't do anything. It doesn't have any advantages. It's got weak attack, weak speed. It doesn't even have defenses to make up for that, and its move pool is shallow. Even in later games, it got like Sucker Punch. There was the physical special split. Wasn't much of a help for Mightyena. I said in a recent video that I think Mightyena is the Gen 3 Pokemon most deserving of a new evolution. This Pokemon has been left by the wayside and abandoned by the developers for too long. I would love to see something for Mightyena, because every dog should have its day. That's just basic ethics, okay? But unfortunately, in its current state, this is the worst dog. Up next, the second worst dog, Furfrou, a poodle-themed Pokemon with the novel ability to dress up in different outfits, which is pretty fun. You have such outfits as the Pharaoh outfit, and you can wear like a hat and a suit and stuff like that. Very nice. But unfortunately, in battle, not a very good Pokemon. Out of battle, it might be the best dog. But in battle, no, it doesn't have any stats. Its speed is okay with 102 base speed, but everything else is not very good. It does also have actually one of the best abilities in the whole game in the form of Fur Coat, which just doubles your defense. Incredible ability, but a mono normal type with a very low base defense of only 60 and little in the way of good defensive move pool can't really take advantage of this ability. In hacked formats, where you can hack any ability you want onto Pokemon, Fur Coat is one of the most elite in the game. Everything wants this ability, but unfortunately not fantastic on Furfrou itself. Up next is Boltund. Boltund is an electric type dog released in Gen 8, and it's largely outclassed by many other mono-electric types. I would put this above Mightyena and Furfrou though, because at least it does have a very high speed stat of base 121. It's got okay attacking stats of 90 in each, and it has the ability Strong Jaw, which boosts bite-based attacks by 1.5x, which turns Thunderfang into actually a fairly decent form of physical electric stab, which a lot of Pokemon don't get. Top of that, you get Fire Fang and Crunch as further bite-based attacks, and Volt Switch for a form of pivoting. So in the Gen 8 ZU tier, there's actually quite a good Pokemon. But of course, in any higher tier, compared to any other electric type in the game almost, this is a pretty bad Pokemon, and not a very powerful dog, unfortunately. Up next is Manectric. Manectric, another electric dog. I guess it's fairly similar to Boltund, but it's more of a special attacker. I would put this a little bit above Boltund because it has the ability Lightning Rod, which grants an electric immunity and a special attack boost if hit by electric moves. I think that's a slightly better ability. It also has on it the move Switcheroo, which is quite nice with a Choice Scarf. You can give the enemy your held item. It has the same effect as Trick. And Overheat is quite a nice coverage option on this, with a high power on it. It has 105 special attack and speed, which is decent, but of course, similarly to Boltund, it is outclassed by most other electric types that are kind of just the same Pokemon but better, regrettably. Mega Manectric I'll bring up later. Mega Manectric is ranked separately. But base form Manectric is a lesser dog, for sure. Up next is Lycanroc Midnight. Lycanroc has different forms, and the worst of all these forms is the Midnight form. Even though it looks cool, it has a fun werewolf-like appearance with a bipedal nature. It has the worst stat distribution of all of the Lycanrocs, with its low speed and poor defenses. It does have a very high attack stat, and the ability No Guard, which is quite good alongside Stone Edge, an inaccurate rock-type move, which is now perfectly accurate. That's good, but you're kind of too slow to take good advantage of that. Rock-types struggle already, but being a slow and defensively frail rock-type certainly doesn't help. You're vulnerable to too many things. Weak to a million different common types, and just... it's difficult for this Pokemon to have much of a day. But I'd put it above the previous dogs for the power of its high attack, No Guard, and that Stone Edge maneuver, as well as Sucker Punch at least as a form of priority. All the dogs so far are ZU ranked, I must add. But these are not our best dogs so far. Up next we have Thievul, a nefarious looking Pokemon, a thief. This is a fox. I think foxes are a kind of dog. That sounds right. If they're not, then they're similar enough to be on the list. Every dog has its day. I mean all of them, okay? Thievul is pretty bad. It's a mono dark type with underwhelming stats. It would probably look a bit bizarre to put this above the Pokemon mentioned so far even, but Thievul does have the saving grace of a really, really good ability in the form of Stakeout. We can be thankful that this ability is only on garbage Pokemon because it's pretty damn powerful. Stakeout means you deal double damage if the enemy switches out. Double damage is crazy, and on a dark type special attacker is a stretch. It has 87 special attack. But thanks to Stakeout, you can achieve significant damage with this Pokemon, and it does have Parting Shot for pivoting as well. And the move Burning Jealousy, which is an interesting move actually. It is a 100% burn chance if the enemy had a stat rise this turn. What a concept that is. I would give Thievul a bit of respect, but of course not a very powerful dog. Granbull. I like this Pokemon because it looks like the dog from Tom and Jerry. I've always kind of liked this guy. Also, this is the first Pokemon to ever earn a net worth of $1 granbillion. We can give that some respect. I would also give Granbull a bit more respect than the Pokemon mentioned so far because it is a fairy type ever since Gen 6, and it's a fairy type with Intimidate on it. That alone is just okay because it's a good typing and a good ability. It also has a pretty high attack stat. Intimidate helps it on the bulk department. Its bulk isn't the best, but Intimidate's just a great ability, lowering attack on switch in. And the physical move pool is decent. Don't get me wrong, it's a pretty low quality dog, but consider that it looks like Tom and Jerry, and consider that Fairy is a good typing. I'm happy putting this above the dogs mentioned so far. Mabostiff is up next. This is a funny dog. It's also an annoying dog in some way, in my opinion, because I don't like how it has two double letters in its name. That annoys me because I can never spell it correctly. I always forget that it's got double S and a double F, and that seems a little bit unfair. But regardless, I would give some respect to Mabostiff because Mabostiff has a pretty high attack stat of 120, and it also has the ability Stakeout, mentioned previously on Thievul, but this is a physical attacker with Stakeout, and it is much more threatening than Thievul. So this can actually be a pretty decent wall breaker. It's actually quite a unique Pokemon compared to other physical dark types for this reason. Its coverage is pretty limited though. You've got Crunch and Play Rough and Psychic Fangs. And little else. What else have we got on us? Fire Fang, Lash Out, not really anything. A little bit lacking in the move pool department, but you can't deny the power of Dark Spam with Stakeout. That's pretty good for a low-level dog. I would give it some respect for that. Up next is Duxbun, a Gen 9 dog, and of all the ZU ranked dogs so far, I would give Duxbun a bit of credit. Not only for being kind of a fun Pokemon, it's a bread-based dog. I appreciate that. It's a mono fairy type. I don't know, is bread fairy related? I suppose so. I guess that this sets the precedent for that for the first time ever. Duxbun has the ability Well-Baked Body, which is actually a great ability design. I like this. It's flavorful because it's of course bread. It's well baked, and if it's hit by a fire move, its defense is raised by 2 stages because it's getting cooked in the oven and it's hardening, granting it more defense. It's genius. Because of this ability and its fairy typing, Duxbun actually has a niche in Ubers, surprisingly, because it is a good Koraidon switch in. Koraidon is the big legendary of Gen 9 from the Pokemon Scarlet game, and it is a dragon fighting type that creates sun on the field. So you're worried about big dragon type attacks and big fire type attacks. Duckspun is immune to both, and the other type you're worried about from Koraidon, fighting type attacks, you resist them. You also have a solid physical defense stat of 115. Unfortunately, you have a very bad base HP stat of 57. I think this Pokemon would be much better if it had higher HP. Unfortunately, that's a significant drawback. But this is actually a good wall to Koraidon, and not only that, it can provide wish support to your team. And it can't do much else though, it kind of just sits there against Koraidon and doesn't do much. But also, compared to these other low-level dogs, it's got a good defensive typing, good ability, and wish support, which is respectable. It's respectable. Stoutland is the next dog, and this dog has a high point in its career that many dogs can only hope for. This dog had its day in the past, okay? Every dog has its day. Some are upcoming, some have already happened. In the case of Stoutland, his day already happened back in Gen 5, when his ability Sand Rush was at the peak of its excellence. Sand Rush Stoutland was a menace in Gen 5 for a time. Sand Rush, of course, grants double speed in the Sandstorm, and you can set permanent Sandstorm on the field in Gen 5 with the help of Tyranitar or the Hippo. So, despite its, fairly below average stats, limited physical move pool, it had Sand Rush, and that's all you needed. Double speed in the sand, click the button, and you are good to go. Its attack is actually respectable too, 110. Unfortunately, in Gen 5, well, fortunately really, because they were broken, but in Gen 5, the abilities that boost your speed in the weather, Chlorophyll, Swift Swim, and Sand Rush, are all banned, and ever since then, Stoutland stock has plummeted. It's just a pretty average physical attacking normal type. It does have the good abilities of Intimidate and Scrappy. Scrappy allows you to hit ghosts, but it's not enough to be too noteworthy. Stoutland is usually ranked in lower tiers, but it did have that high point, and that's worth mentioning. Lycanroc base form is up next. This is a wolf, but like I said, I'm pretty sure wolves are a kind of dog, or at least dog adjacent enough. Lycanroc base form is an okay Pokemon. It's ranked PU, which is above many of the dogs mentioned so far. Actually a fairly decent physical attacker with high speed of 112, a solid attack stat of 115. It also has Sand Rush for the double speed. It came a little bit too late because post Gen 5 there's not permanent anymore, but can still be used for some aggression. And lower tiers do have some sand setters you can use to take advantage of Lycanroc actually, so that's useful. And its physical move pool is quite good. It actually has the really nice option of Accelerock, an exclusive move for the Lycanrocs, which is a rock type priority move. Older Pokemon wish they had this. Really good move. But of course, I mean, it's frail, it dies to a slight breeze, rock is not a very good mono type, and many similar fast physical threats are just better than this. They just outrank Lycanroc. But in the lower tiers, this guy can do some stuff. Up next is Delphox, another fox-based Pokemon which is dog adjacent as we've established. I've got to say though, this is probably the least dog-like Pokemon so far with its humanoid features, and also it's a fox, which is less of a dog than Granbull, for example, but of course still qualifies for the list. Don't make any mistake about that. Delphox is pretty average. It doesn't excel in any particular area. It's a special attacker with a fire psychic typing, and its stats are nothing to really write home about. It has a fairly functional special move pool with Calm Mind, stab options, and some coverage like Grass Knot, for example. Its ability is Magician, which steals a held item if you don't have a held item and you attack the enemy. Not a great ability, honestly. Not very useful on this. It usually just uses Blaze, the default ability for fire starters. Fire Psychic, first and foremost, is just a bad defensive typing. You're weak to, Dark, Ghost, Water, Ground, Rock. It's rough. Those are all very common types. Delphox is in the line of fire for many things. It's not very good defensively, offensively. Speed is average. It's just average and it suffers from its poor typing. It's higher ranked than the previous dogs, but it's a very middling dog. Very middle of the road dog, if it even is a dog. Now this right here is a dog, Houndoom. I'm a fan of this Pokemon. And in the early gens, this Pokemon's quite good. It wasn't OU ranked, but it was viable-ish. In Gen 2, Houndoom can operate as a pursuit trapper to get rid of Gengar, as well as being an okay wall breaker with Sunny Day Fire Blast Charcoal hitting very hard, and powering through certain defensive Pokemon, especially Snorlax. In Gen 3, Houndoom was granted the ability Flash Fire, which allowed it to be not only a pursuit trapper that can get rid of Gengar, which is very important, but also a fire type switch in. You can come in on Moltres and Charizard and be fairly happy about it. which is also very good as those are popular Pokemon these days. Houndoom also sets itself apart from other Pursuit Trappers in the tier, mostly Tyranitar. Tyranitar can be a special attacker, but that's not its absolute strong suit. And sometimes you also don't want sand on the field. So Houndoom is a Pursuit Trapper that doesn't set sand on the field, is a bit faster and more specially threatening. Plus, has that benefit of coming in on Moltres. Also happens to be immune to Burn, which makes it even more sturdy to come in on Gengar, as the Gengar now has Will-O-Wisp. But from then on, Houndoom would be pretty average and not very remarkable at all. It's an okay special attacker in some scenarios and lower tiers, but a fairly middle-of-the-road dog. But one of my more respected dogs. I have a lot of respect for this particular fella, and I would rate it highly on my personally biased dog rankings, but in a more objective ranking, you would put this about middle of the road. Some early success, but it petered out later on, and it became a fairly unremarkable dog. Up next is Arcanine, one of the most popular dogs, a Gen 1 dog, and a respectable dog. This Pokemon has two good abilities, Intimidate and Flash Fire, and a fairly functional stat distribution overall with a high attack of 110, also some pretty solid special attack, pretty good speed of 95, and acceptable bulk when you consider it has Intimidate. Arcanine also has a nice move pool with access to extreme speed being one of its more noteworthy traits. Extreme speed is a very sought after attack. A priority move with much higher base power than expected for such a move, base power of 80. Arcanine has a good move pool too, with options like Morning Sun and Will-O-Wisp letting it operate in a more defensive role if it wants, as well as Intimidate helping there, and also pretty nice attacking options. Arcanine is never ranked OU in competitive singles, but it's usually not at the very bottom of the barrel either, ending up around the middle somewhere, usually. And I think it's a cool Pokemon too. Up next is Zoroark, and I'll be honest, this isn't the first thing in the world that comes to mind when you ask me to name a dog Pokemon, but it is sort of a fox-like creature. We can include it on the list for fun if we want. Zoroark, a lot of people like this guy. I've never been that fond of it. It is very unique though. It has the ability Illusion, its main claim to fame. Illusion is its exclusive ability, and Illusion has the very unique effect of disguising yourself as another Pokemon. It's a very fun idea that captures the imagination, and many players, when this first came out, were thinking this could be overpowered or it could be game-breaking. But in reality, in practice, it's not that useful to disguise as another Pokemon. Often, you can catch your opponent off guard with the fact that you're disguised temporarily, but that surprise value wears off very quickly, as just getting hit will reveal that you are a Zoroark. But also, if you just literally use any move, most of the time that's going to reveal that you are a Zoroark, because you're disguised as a Makago. Of course, Makago can't use Dark Pulse, and it's not very fast, so that's a giveaway. Also doesn't help that this Pokemon came out the same gen that Team Preview came out, and when you can see that the enemy has a Zoroark, the surprise is certainly not as impactful, is it? And you're always on the prowl for a potential disguised Zoroark. But beyond that, I mean, it's better than many of these other Pokemon just because its stats are pretty solid, as 120 special attack and 105 speed. Its defenses and bulk is really bad. It's got good attack too, meaning it can run mixed sets, and it's got nasty plot and a pretty good special move pool. So it can actually just be a pretty straightforwardly good special attacker, usually ranked in like RU in most gens, or somewhere around there. So yeah, Zoroark, it exists. Up next is the Beagle, Smeagol. A controversial Pokemon for some reason. People hate this guy. I like him. I think he's cool. A Beagle that knows how to paint. Some of you don't enjoy fine art, I guess. It's understandable. Smeagol has the gimmick of learning every single move in the game. And despite his terrible stats, that gimmick is very strong. And Smeagol is often used in much higher tiers than what it's ranked in. It's ranked ZU, very low, but with its unique ability to run any combination of moves at once, you can run options like Sticky Web and Nuzzle and all of the different entry hazards that exist and various signature moves on Pokemon that usually nothing else can get. Smeagol even has merit up in Ubers as a hazard setter, oftentimes. So for a low-ranked dog, I would rate it pretty high here for its value in higher tiers. Up next is Ninetales, another fox, which falls under the dog broader category. Ninetales had its time in the sun quite literally, had its day in Gen 5, where it was granted the ability Drought, which sets sun on the field permanently in Gen 5. For that reason, Ninetales is ranked OU in Gen 5 to this day. It's a little bit of an outdated ranking because ever since Chlorophyll was banned, sun teams have not been the best, but you do sometimes still see sun teams occasionally at high level. People experiment with them still, and Drought is undoubtedly a powerful ability in the format. From Gen 5 onwards, when weather was nerfed to no longer be permanent, drought still had its merit here and there, but unfortunately Ninetales was usurped by Torkoal in Gen 7, who became a more desirable sun setter in many contexts, as it's bulkier, has Stealth Rock and Rapid Spin, and other such value. But in Gen 9, Ninetales is returning to the forefront as the superior drought Pokemon once again, not only because Sun teams are generally much better, as there are a lot of photosynthesis Pokemon, the Paradox Pokemon that get boosted up in the sun, the highest stat gets boosted in the sun. And in addition, Torkoal is a bit slow for the Gen 9 metagame. It is not the best defensively against common Pokemon, and Ninetales is a bit more proactive with its high speed and decent special attack. Well, to be honest, decent is a stretch, it's only 81, but with Sun Boost from Drought and Stab at Weather Ball, you can do pretty good stuff. Encore is also a great option in Gen 9 as a way to disrupt boost sweepers, especially King Gambit, who often finds itself locked into Swords Dance or Sucker Punch. And Healing Wish is another great option to keep momentum up, sacrificing yourself to fully heal an ally. Actually a good momentum play, because you not only pivot into them, you fully heal perhaps an offensive Pokemon that can win the game. So Ninetales is actually pretty respectable in competitive singles. Despite being ranked ZU, it has uses in higher tiers all the time, and it had OU status back in Gen 5 and a central metagame presence for a time. We are now reaching impressive dog territory. Dogs from this point onwards will all be pretty good. And here we have the next up, Lucario. Lucario is an icon, one of the most famous Gen 4 Pokemon. They put him in Smash Brothers even. A humanoid Pokemon, but also a dog Pokemon very clearly. Lucario is an OU ranked Pokemon in its debut game, a chief abuser of the newly introduced at the time Close Combat, an unprecedented 120 power fighting type attack that is 100% accurate, with a pretty minuscule drawback of only -1 defense and special defense. It's an incredible wall breaking option at the time, and with an impressive 110 attack, doesn't sound very good these days, but back then it was pretty okay. That's a scary close combat. In addition, Lucario also gets extreme speed, a rarely distributed move, but a very powerful one, and Lucario gets Bullet Punch as further priority, other options like Ice Punch. Lucario is a pretty scary Pokemon in Gen 4 that can clean up late games with its powerful priority moves, and also just destroy anything slower than it with that huge stab close combat. It's also a mixed attacker with high special attack too. In fact, its special attack is even higher, 115, and it has plenty of special attacking options too. Nasty Plot as a boosting move, Aura Sphere, Vacuum Wave for special fighting type priority, even as Shadow Ball, imagine that. A diverse Pokemon with many different ways to apply offense, and what's nice about this in Gen 4 is that it's immune to Sandstorm, and Sandstorm is often up permanently thanks to Tyranitar and the Hippo, and Lucario ×4 resists Stealth Rock, so it's taking almost nothing from Stealth Rock on the way in, which is very important in Gen 4. Beyond Gen 4, it would never reach OU status again, unfortunately, but it's a pretty good Pokemon in lower tiers in later games, thanks to its solid move pool, access to those various priority moves. That's probably its biggest claim to fame, is all those priority moves. These days, Lucario is a pretty underwhelming offensive threat with many new Pokemon with superior stats and superior options and abilities especially introduced since, but it's still a rather solid Pokemon, and I would describe it as a good dog. Mega Houndoom is up next, and like many Mega forms, this is significantly enhancing the stats of the original, with a whopping 140 base special attack and a significantly enhanced speed stat too of 115, with a Dark Fire typing, which is very good offensively, and you know, all the same moves you always had, like Nasty Plot, Fire Blast, Dark Pulse, etc. This is enhanced. But it's actually one of the worst Mega forms in the game. It's on the lower end of the Mega forms because, of course, you could only have one Mega Pokemon per team, and this is not exactly the most desirable one when, you know, superior special attacking Megas like Mega Alakazam exist. There's better breakers like Mega Metacham and various examples. Mega Houndoom unfortunately gets a pretty awkward ability after Mega Evolving, that is Solar Power. In the sun, your moves deal more damage, quite a lot more damage, but you take damage in the sun at the same time, kind of like gaining a Life Orb effect on you. I feel like Flash Fire is a better ability actually. It's a shame that you have to lose Flash Fire for this more situational and in many ways worse ability. If only you got something better than this, maybe it would be a better Pokemon. Regardless, it's still used sometimes as a breaker just for its great typing, move pool, and stats, but not the best Mega in the world, actually. Hisuian Arcanine is another form of Arcanine from the Pokemon Legends Arceus video game, first available to use competitively in Generation 9, and it's pretty damn good actually. On the surface it looks like it's got a lot of problems. Fire rock typing is not great, you are vulnerable too. Water and ground type attacks with super effective force, times 4 damage from both of those, but this is actually a very good offensive threat. It has similar stats to Arcanine, 115 attack and 90 speed. Not the best by modern standards in Gen 9, but this Pokemon has the excellent ability Rock Head, which grants an immunity to recoil damage. Recoil is a significant drawback to many high power attacks like Flare Blitz, Head Smash. These deal most of your HP in damage when they deal damage, but you got Rock Head, you're immune to that completely, so these are all upside, and the high power of these attacks turns Hisuian Arcanine into a solid wall break. It's ranked UU in Gen 9, which is pretty good actually, considering the power level of the most recent Pokemon release. I mean, UU is impressive. But even in OU, you can make this guy work. It's decent. It's got these incredible high power stab moves, close combat is good coverage, Wild Charge can even be used. It's an electric type physical attack and you're immune to the recoil, so it's just good. And you got extreme speed too, which is damn good in Gen 9. Priority is very important to take out all these fast threats running around. And extreme speed is one of the best priority moves in the whole game still. Plus you can Terra Normal now to become a normal type and gain stab boost on normal moves. So extreme speed hits even harder. And you are no longer weak to all those attacks you were weak to before, which is nice. So Arcanine Hisui is quite good relative to many other dogs. Okidogi is up next, new Gen 9 Pokemon. And this Pokemon is quite good in competitive singles. Poison Fighting is rather a nice type combination with a lot of defensive value. This Pokemon's stats are pretty well rounded, especially the attack, defense, and solid HP. And Okidogi has 2 good choices for abilities. It's got a Guard Dog, which grants an immunity to Intimidate, and if struck by Intimidate you get an attack bonus. I suppose it's a bit worse than Defiant, which has basically the same result when getting intimidated, but it's still useful because it means you match up quite well against Landorus Therian, who without this ability would be a good switch in against you. But Intimidate is useless, failing to nullify your attack, and you even have Ice Punch, which gets buffed if they switch in. So Landorus Therian's actually a little bit scared of Okidogi. Makes things a bit awkward. Your other great ability is Toxic Chain. All of your attacks have a 30% chance to inflict toxic poison. That's damn good. And Okidogi can make great use of this on an Assault Vest set. It's well suited as an Assault Vest Pokemon. It's quite good at coming in against Darkrai and a lot of different special attackers actually. It has a pretty nice move pool for an Assault Vest Pokemon with Drain Punch as a form of stab and healing, knock off to remove items, various coverage, and even the ability to spread a poison while clicking all these moves thanks to Toxic Chain. It's also pretty nice as a bulk up sweeper, similar to what Annihilate did in the past with the bulk up Drain Punch combo and the excellent coverage of Knock Off and Ice Punch. With Terra Water for a nice defensive Terra type, you can secure victory and make it very difficult to ever eliminate this in an endgame. So Okidogi's quite good. It's ranked UUBL, which is the middle point between UU and OU in Generation 9, and I think it's quite good in OU. Up next is Alolan Ninetales, one of the most popular of the regional forms. It is an ice-based Ninetales, with the ability to set hail on the field instead of sun, and snow on the field in Gen 9 when that shift happened. It's an Ice Fairy type Pokemon, which is actually pretty good. Ice types struggle defensively, so the Fairy typing is doing a lot of heavy lifting, granting neutrality to fighting and immunity to dragon. Gives you some way to hit the field at least. Alolan Ninetales is a fantastic offense enabler with access to Aurora Veil, which is basically Reflect and Light Screen in one. It only works in the snow or hail, but you of course create your own snow, so that's convenient. Alolan Ninetales also is a pretty nice offensive threat itself. It's got Freeze Dry and Moonblast for stab options, and Freeze Dry of course hits water type super effectively. You also have Encore and Hypnosis as disruption effects. So Alolan Ninetales is this fast weather setter with a very good support move pool, and also it's speedy and threatening enough to be a respectable threat itself. Alolan Ninetales is pretty good in every gen it exists in. It's NU currently in Gen 9, but there was a period where this was very popular in OU as an offensive enabler with Aurora Veil, because Aurora Veil allows boost sweepers to set up very freely, and there were a lot of powerful boost sweepers in the game in the past, so Ninetales was a very common teammate for them. Mega Manectric is up next. I like this Pokemon. I think it's one of the cooler Megas because it's a solid buff to a Pokemon that deserved it. Manectric didn't really stand out very much compared to other electric types, but the Mega certainly helped. And it also is quite functional competitively. When Mega Manectric evolves, it gains the ability Intimidate, so in its base form it has that Lightning Rod to grant special attack to it, and some electric immunity temporarily, and then when it Mega evolves, it does a different thing. I like that. I like the synergy between the base form and the Mega form. It also gets a significant stat increase, 135 speed and special attack now, and with Volt Switch, Thunderbolt, HP Ice, it's a straightforward, fast special attacker. It's unique in the sense that it has Intimidate, which many don't, and Fire Coverage, which many don't. So actually OU viable Pokemon in Gen 6. I think it's decent in Gen 7 too. It's not OU ranked, but can be used in some scenarios. And the visual design is one of the cooler ones. It's a big lightning bolt. I really like how it looks. And everything about it, really. Very cool Mega Dog. Zamazenta is a legendary dog. This guy is on the cover of Pokemon Shield version. In competitive singles, though, this is one of the lesser box legendaries ever released. Completely unviable in Ubers, in both Gen 8 and 9, where it exists, but one of the few box legendaries that has been demoted from Ubers to OU and allowed to exist in the more balanced competitive format, where usually those powerful box legendaries are banned. But in this environment, Zamazenta thrives. Zamazenta is a staple of Gen 9 OU now, where it's ability Dauntless Shield, which grants a defense boost on switch in, allows a top row very well as a temporary defensive check to many things. With legendary level stats, including high speed and high defense, as well as the move Body Press, which scales based on your defense. This is an outstanding answer to King Gambit, and also just a powerful, speedy threat in itself. It's a great combination of defensive and offensive value. Iron Defense and Body Press can be a win condition, you scaling your defense, which buffs up the damage of Body Press. I think it's fun that this Pokemon's allowed in Gen 9 OU. I think it's good to keep King Gambit in check too, and also various powerful physical threats. It's been controversial. Some people don't want a big box legend in OU. I think it's fun though. I like playing with it. Definitely one of the better dogs relatively as well. We can't deny that. Now, some people might disagree with this placement here, but I'm going to put Houndstone this high. I'm going to put Houndstone this high, even though in its current state, Houndstone is terrible. But don't forget, there was a time when Houndstone was indestructible, and the entire world centered around it. Houndstone is a new dog in Gen 9 with a gravestone on its head, Ghost Dog. And Houndstone, despite its terrible stats, was a problem temporarily, because Houndstone is one of the few Pokemon in the game that gets the move Last Respects. Last Respect is one of the most broken moves competitive singles has ever seen. It's a ghost-type physical attack that gains 50 power for each party member that is fainted. It can achieve such power at the end of a game with Houndstone as the last Pokemon standing that it can one-hit KO resistances and deal so much damage that nothing can possibly stop it except a normal type, which is a huge problem. This move has been banned. It's not common that they ban moves, but this just deals 1,000,000 damage. So they ban, and multiple things get it, and whatever gets it abuses it to the point of brokenness. So for that reason, I think that in its most powerful form, Houndstone is a better Pokemon than Zamazenta, as crazy as that seems, because it just kills everything in a single hit. What can be said? Bit of a Dracovish moment. It's only good because of one attack and everything else about it sucks, but that was the reality we lived in for about a week before it got banned. So I think that Houndstone belongs here, at near the top of the dog power levels, the dog power rankings. Up next is Zamazenta's crowned form, which you can transform into using the Rusted Shield item. This is a form of Zamazenta with much higher stats. Then this one is banned from being used in OU. Only base form Zamazenta can be used. So this is an Ubers ranked dog. Also has a Fighting Steel typing, which is a bit better defensively. There's no doubt about that. A very visually imposing dog and a very powerful dog, relatively speaking. Although it's not very viable in the Ubers tier. Compared to other big legendaries, it's kind of lacking in its value. It is fairly limited on the move pool side, with Body Press being very powerful from it, but it's kind of easy to stop to up in Ubers, where a simple Ghost type or Fighting Resist will end your whole career. And defensively, despite the numbers being high, a lot of fellow legendaries threaten this guy significantly, especially Koraidon, who is the #1 Pokemon in Ubers right now. So Zamazenta Crowned, it doesn't feel like it's doing much in the tier that it's allowed to be used in, but a lot of dogs look up to this Pokemon. Like Granbull views Zamazenta Crowned as kind of a mentor figure, an aspirational figure. So in terms of cultural impact, I think Zamazenta Crowned is extremely noteworthy. Up next is Shaymin Sky, probably the most villainous dog in the franchise. Shaymin turns from a hedgehog into a dog, and then the moral implications of that are felt everywhere because it gains the ability Serene Grace, everybody's least favorite ability. Secondary effect chances are doubled, and guess what? You've got Air Slash, which has flinch on it. Oh boy, it has 60% flinch chance on a stab move. So Shaymin Sky just has that chance to click this move with a Choice Scarf and win the entire game through sheer luck, because if you flinch you can't move and he keeps hitting you, and then what if you just keep not being able to move? There's a pretty decent chance that that's going to happen actually. On top of that, I mean, decent special attacker too, 120, so your Seed Flare is dealing significant damage, and it has an 80% chance to lower your special defense by 2, so that can be a powerful breaking option. And you've got Healing Wish for further value if you've expended your usefulness. I think it's a better Pokemon than Zamazenta Ground actually, because it can simply just win games if it hits the jackpot, and I think that's a bit better than what Zamazenta Ground can do. But I would say that Zamazenta Ground has more honor and is a more upstanding dog than this, who is... Just look at the look in his eyes. He looks like... I don't know. He looks like he has ill intent, doesn't he? I don't think he has good motivations. You can just see it in his eyes. The third best dog in the world is Mega Lucario, an incredibly powerful dog. They gave Lucario one of the best Mega forms in the whole game. This is an Ubers ranked Pokemon, banned from being used in OU, it's too good. And in both Gen 6 and 7 Ubers, this is one of the best wall breakers in the game. When Mega Lucario evolves, it gains the ability Adaptability, which grants a 2x stab bonus on moves of the same type, rather than the usual 1.5x, so just a blanket increase to your most powerful attacks. You also get a significant stat increase with 145 base attack now. That's legendary level. 140 special attack too if you want it, and also 112 speed, a bit of a speed increase. But even among the game's most powerful legendaries, this is an incredibly devastating wall breaker, with a Swords Dance close combat from Mega Lucario being one of the most impossible things to switch in against in the world. It helps significantly that you have such good stab moves, Close Combat Meteor Mash for Steel Stab, and Bullet Punch for Priority, which hits like a bullet itself thanks to your bonus stab damage. Mega Lucario is an elite level dog, a dog that many aspire to be like. Dogs worldwide wish they could be him, but they will never be him. The second best dog is Zacian Hero Form, the base form of Zacian, the box legendary of Pokemon Sword, and significantly better than its counterpart. Zacian in its debut game of Gen 8 was banned from Ubers, and that never happens. The reasoning? Zacian's ability Intrepid Sword was absurd in Gen 8. It grants a permanent attack boost. On switch in, you get an attack boost, and it never goes away even if you switch out. You come back in, you get the attack boost again. It's a fairy type, which is a fantastic type. Its stats are through the roof, with an incredible speed stat of 138 especially, and formidable bulk as well. High attack, this Pokemon has it all, and it has the benefit over its crowned form of being able to equip an item on top, usually a Choice Scarf or Choice Band. Its physical move pool is also excellent, with options like Play Rough, Close Combat, mostly Play Rough though, if we're being honest. Zacian has fallen from grace a little bit in Gen 9 though, because the ability Intrepid Sword was nerfed, now only being a temporary attack increase. You switch in, you get it once, and then if you switch out, it's not coming back, unlike in Gen 8 when it was permanent at all times. Zacian also had its attack nerfed from 130 base to 120, pretty significant decrease. And of course, the only dog to ever outdo Zacian was its own crowned form. Zacian's crowned form is even better. This Pokemon in its crowned form gains a Steel typing, and Fairy Steel is an unbelievable combo. It's the best typing you can get, I would say, with so many offensive and defensive advantages. You have all the same traits as Zacian, with the Intrepid Sword boost that never goes away, but you now have Behemoth Blade as a 100-100 Steel stab move, so your move pool is even better. And your stats, I mean, they definitely went too far with this. I know every dog is supposed to have its day, but it's possible to go too far in that respect, because it has 170 base attack, 148 base speed. It's maybe the most overtuned Pokemon of all time. The only thing close is Mega Rayquaza, but Zacian Crowned is up there. I'd say they're on fairly even footing and fairly close in the sheer level of overpoweredness they represent. And much like Zacian base form, Zacian Crowned was severely nerfed in Generation 9. It now only has a 150 base attack. I know I'm saying only, to one of the highest attack stats ever done, but that's a significant decrease of 20 points, and the Intrepid Sword boost is no longer permanent. Zacian Crown is still very good in Gen 9 Ubers. It's one of the best Pokemon, but it's not anything goes level anymore. It's not ban-worthy anymore because there are actually Pokemon that can check it now. Skeledirge is a good check. Ho-Oh can sort of handle it, kind of. Scarf Coridon and also the common Arceus Ground can threaten it well, too. But there's no doubt this is the best dog ever done. But unlike Zamazenta Crown, I don't know if many of the lower level dogs are aspiring to be like Zacian. He's like too perfect. He's Mr. Perfect. They gave him everything. Zamazenta Crown is more of an honest dog. He worked to get where he is. But Zacian Crown was clearly born with a silver spoon in his mouth that then transformed into a ginormous sword at a later age. And it's not really fair to other dogs. The Zacian Crown, I think, is an unfair dog. The greater dog community doesn't respect Zacian Crown that much, but there's no doubt that he's on top of the world on this list. This is by far the best dog, whether you like it or not. However, in a cosmic sense, in a moral sense, the best dog would be Granbull because he looks like the dog from Tom and Jerry. But that's a different story. That's a different metric. What do you think, though? Who's your favorite dog that I've talked about in this list? Please let me know down below in the comments. Did you disagree with any of my dog placements? You can let me know that as well. Check out timothycool.com for dog clothing. And thank you for watching, as always.